kind of transition. And most of our questions are really focusing on woodies and ornamentals. We didn't have many weed or turf grass questions, but no, we are open to answering those types of questions as we go along in the future as well. So to start us off for woodies and ornamentals, we've got a question coming to us from Knox County. Okay, it says, I have knockout roses. We've got something going on with their leaves. And so let me pull again. That was a short ask. We might could deal with a little more detail, right? So just try to use as many details as we can. But let me get this picture. They thank you so much, question asker, for sending in a really good picture. What do we want to say? I think Taylor, you had marked some information on the spreadsheet for that one.
Yes, I did. So when you say something's eating my knockout rose leaves, without seeing a picture, I generally have like one pest I'm considering. Now, there are many pests of rose leaves, but usually the rose slug or the sawfly larvae is our number one pest on rose leaves. And after looking at the picture, I still think that's the case. Now, some might say Japanese beetles because they do, but their damage is much more extensive and aggressive than what the sawfly larvae is going to do. The sawfly larvae is going to do what we call window painting. They're going to eat the underside of the leaf just enough to where there's a thin sliver of cuticle left that you can see through like a window pane. Eventually that may fall out, there may be holes, but that is the number one pest that's feeding on rose leaves is that rose slug or sawfly larvae. And they didn't really ask how to control, but I went ahead and put some information in there. Generally, with these pests, they are not detrimental enough to kill your rose. So if it's just a little bit of damage, you can often find them hiding under the bottom of the leaves. They look like little green worms or caterpillars, and you can pick them off, you can spray them off. We often have lots of biological control in beetles and birds and predators and parasitic wasps. Oh, that's a good picture. So you can see that window painting there where they've eaten just enough, but left a sliver left of that leaf that you can kind of see through. And there's the little guy right there, little guy or gal that's hanging out chewing and got that dark head and green body. Hard to see if you don't know what you're looking for because they hide really well. That's how they protect themselves. And so you got to know what you're looking for, and then you can find them. Now, if the damage is so severe that you feel like you need to control, we always recommend the least toxic options first, your horticulture oils, your insecticidal soaps. But one of the products that we would commonly recommend for caterpillars is BT, but these are not caterpillars. So a lot of people say, oh, it's a little caterpillar. I've got BT. I'm going to use it. These are actually more closely related to like ants and wasps. They're not actually butterflies or moths, so that BT won't work on them. So go ahead and not worry about that. But if you have to get into more to harsher chemicals, you can. I put some links in there for that. But just know that there are biological predators out there, and the sawflies only feed for a short amount of time. They feed for like a month or so, they drop off, they burrow in the soil, they wait to come out again and lay eggs on the roses next year. So if you've been noticing this damage for a while and you keep looking under the leaves and there's nothing there, they may already be gone. And so any treatments you put out may not be effective. So just do your scouting and look for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Awesome explanation. I love that we're able to build our vocabulary for noticing some of these symptoms in the garden, right? So understanding the difference between window painting, which is the type of feeding we're seeing with sawflies, their little mouths aren't big enough, and skeletonization, which is what you see from feeding of Japanese beetles. They have larger mouth parts, so they eat all the way through the leaf. That is so important and a really good tool for you to put in your IPM diagnostics little, I don't know, you can call it a
Pocket.
toolbox, but I'm going to call it like
Your
a
little
fanny
pocket.
pack. I'm going to call it a fanny pack
Oh,
because
your
they're
little
back
fanny
in.
pack.
They're cool again.
Oh, or
Something
as
in the
my 7-year-old says, your handy pack.
Oh, that's cute too. That's cute too. Okay, so moving right along, we have plenty of questions to keep us occupied, and I cannot believe that we did not have this question submitted because this is like one of the timeliest things that you guys need to be aware of in your garden right now as far as woody ornamentals go. So since it wasn't submitted, uh, we Lee has provided us with some really excellent photos and videos of this particular issue. And I'm just going to let him kind of usher us into the topic because I don't want us to leave this session today without talking about this very important pest, the
Great.
bagworm.
Thanks, Celeste. Fun fact, the first bagworm call actually came in from Memphis, so the west side of the state for me. I'm not sure
Yes.
how it made it to me, but I was still able to answer it and connect them with their local county agents. Hey, everyone, I'm Lee
Thank you.
Rumble. I'm in Knox County. Wanted to talk about a timely pest. Yeah, so Celeste has pulled up a great image of emerald green arborvitaes. You know, we see these a lot in the landscape. Boy, we did a nursery tour one year and saw over 1 million of these in production. And you talk about fascinating. The scale at which they're grown is enormous. So, of course, they make their way into the landscape soon thereafter. Now, bagworms are interesting because they're, number one, they're out right now, but they affect actually quite a few species. We see them primarily, though, on arborvitae, junipers, cedars, pines, even Leland cypress. I've seen them on fruit trees, and I've even seen them on sweet gum, some of our ornamentals. But again,
I've
about
can I
120 plus species that they affect.
can I add, Lee? I just
Yeah,
thought this is cool because in this picture that I'm showing, you've got a little Japanese maple right here. I see them
yep.
on Japanese maples all the
See,
time.
fair point. I'm sorry. Thank you, Celeste. Yes,
Mhm.
I see them on Japanese maples as well. Good point. So these bagworms are neat because they overwinter basically in a female bag, and you all know that. You've seen the bags before. But basically, what happens is as temps start to warm up in early spring, you know, from late April to late May, even into early June here in Tennessee, we start to see these eggs, of course, ultimately they hatch, they become larvae. The larvae start to kind of disperse. And interestingly, they're very highly mobile at that point. So they'll run around and they'll start to do the damage that you kind of saw in that last image where the tops were getting chewed off of that pretty extensively. So I would argue if you have those species, get out and scout right now because these larvae are going to be active all the way through about the end of August. Now, if you do see the larvae themselves, we've got lightweight options such as BT, that Bacillus thuringiensis we've spoken about, and spinosad. But if you really need to do a knockdown, you might have to move to a heavier pesticide, a permethrin or bifenthrin. Do use caution about that because we do sometimes see secondary outbreaks of spider mites if we eradicate everything on the plant with these heavier pesticides. Now, what's key here though is direct contact with that larvae. So we need to contact that larvae. And the reality here is the earlier the connection with that larvae, the more effective that product's going to be. So when they get above about an inch, they're not quite as effective. So I like, you know, bagworms because they're, again, a fairly easy pest to manage. I would argue that you need to be out in the fall, though, and even through the winter looking for those bags because at that point, you know, Celeste, it's real easy for us to pick that bag off, of course, and all we've got to do at that point is throw it in a bucket of soapy water, and we've taken care of that individual for next spring. Now, that doesn't mean stop your job at that point. It still means go back out in the spring and scout for any bags that may have been left behind from females that had made it through the winter there. So I don't know. If you do see a second outbreak the following year, you might have to move back to those sprays. Just to be honest with you. But if you can stay on top of this 2 years in a row, you're probably going to eradicate these out of whatever plant you have. And I loved what Taylor said, scout your plants, right? That is part of the IPM process. So this is a cool video I sent to Celeste. I hope it's not as choppy as it is here on my end, but this was an actual larvae right at the point of emergence. I was at a botanical garden and this little bag was just flipping and moving. So there was a larvae in there getting ready to emerge. They're going to run around, pick off those needles, weave it with that silk, create the bag. Now, the bag inhibits water. So that means it also inhibits a pesticidal spray. So don't try and target the bags unless you're mechanically pulling them off by hand. Target only the larvae with a pesticidal spray.
I loved everything that you said, and I just want y'all to know a real life scenario. So this very thing happened to me last year. I noticed that I had bagworms. Guess what? Actually, I just love to walk around my garden in the evening. I didn't see it. I smelt it. I smelt that smell of that like conifer, the resin, the sap running. And I'm like, I shouldn't be smelling my conifers, right? So then I started investigating and I saw that I had the very beginnings of some bagworms. And here, one second. I'm going to share this again because I just think that the video is so gross, but some people might like it. Um, these are all of the teeny tiny bagworms that I picked off of that arborvitae last year. I spent probably over an hour just picking, 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 combing through. Then I went back and I did it again. They were concentrated in one primary area. And then I just had them all in a bag and I just burn them afterwards. Because what are you going to do with this bag of all these living, gross little worms? But
You caught them at the right time for sure, Celeste. That was a good play because
yes.
that many would have defoliated a plant very
Oh,
quickly.
it was awful. But let me tell
And
you, the story goes on, right? The
oh,
story
okay,
goes
I'm
on.
sorry.
So I thought it was over. And about 3 weeks ago, I saw a little bit of browning on that same arborvitae. And I was like, oh, I bet I got bagworms again. I need to check that. But I was coming to Knoxville for the Master Gardener Conference. And I was like, I'll take care of it when I come back. Wrong. Wrong decision. I came back, half of the plant has been defoliated. It's brown. And at that point, I instituted chemical control. It took care of them real easily. They were still teeny tiny, under an inch. But as I got to looking, I'm like, how did this happen? I missed a few last year when I picked them off. And when they get bigger, they don't overwinter and hang out on the tips of branches like the teeny tiny ones do. They migrate into the canopy. And I started finding lots and lots of inch-and-a-half size bags that I had missed last year because I didn't go back in the fall, like you said. It's a perfect story. So I hope that that brought you joy because it brought
Yeah,
me
that's
sadness.
wild. Yeah, that's a pretty big outbreak there.
So, anyways, so just a really true life story. Don't delay when you know that bagworms are a problem. Take action immediately, whether that's through removing them with hand or other methods. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking us in a deep dive. I'll call that our deep dive for the day into bagworms. Okay, moving on. We've got a question from Henry County. Yay. This kind of like Northwest Tennessee, for those who may not know where that is. Why didn't my irises bloom? Do they need fertilizer? They have bloomed previously. And what is the proper way to thin them? Or do I even need to thin them? So kind of a multi-level question here. They did provide um, a picture, but the picture actually has a bloom on it. So in this case, it's blooming, but maybe it's not blooming as profusely as what it has in the past. Um, Taylor, do you want to start us on kind of talking through that? What might be going on?
I was like, yeah, of course, and I was not unmuted. So, yeah, so I mean, with irises, I mean, there's with most bulbs and corms and all of that, they overwinter in the root structure or stem structure that's underground. And as they get older, like they asked in this question, they multiply. And so, yes, overcrowding of bulbs, corms, root stem structures, underground structures can cause depleted blooming. So that can be overcrowded competition could be an issue. And so when you're dividing your irises, usually when we're dividing any of our spring blooming or summer blooming, I always look and Celeste, you can chime in here too, because I know you have a lot in your landscape.
I do. Oh, wait,
um,
they said they put the wrong picture and now I found the right
oh
picture.
no.
So, no, you keep talking. It's fine. It's the same
Okay.
question. It's just the picture of their group of iris that are no longer blooming. So keep
Okay.
keep going and then I'll hop in.
Yeah, so generally, we're going to wait till after they get done blooming to divide. We're going to wait until they go into a more what we would call a dormant period. They still have their green, they may still have their green leaves, etc. up, but we generally wait until they're more dormant. Or sometimes what we'll do is we'll go 2 seasons before they're going to bloom. So like we'll say like if they're spring blooming, I'll divide them in the summer or fall that way that they can get established and rerouted and energy stored and all that in order to bloom come spring again. Another issue where irises may not bloom is too much shade. You know, even though we can, all irises will tolerate some shade, too much can cause less blooming. And then, of course, fertilization can affect that. Over fertilization of nitrogen can affect blooming and things like that. But if you have never divided them, I would consider division or at least digging them up to see what it's like underground and how they are growing because division can definitely help invigorate new growth for blooming.
Yes. And so I agree with all those things. And I'll also add that if those rhizomes over time get buried too
Mm.
deeply, like I saw
Yep,
your garden looked wonderful and you had a really nice layer of organic mulch there. So if you're mulching that area and that rhizome gets buried, that can drastically reduce flowering. I mean, they
for
really,
sure.
the top of that rhizome wants to be exposed
Yeah.
like to the open air. So think about in your iris beds, kind of moving mulch away from the tops of those rhizomes so those crowns can get the oxygen that they need. When you plant them, I don't even actually dig a hole. I kind of make like a little, almost like a
Hmm.
little, think of like a little
Trench.
triangle, like a trench
Hmm.
on each
Like
side,
a
right?
trench. Yeah.
Right. And so the rhizome sits here on top, and then it does go down a little bit so that those fibrous roots that are growing off the bottom of the rhizome have a place to go right there on the edge. And you just cover up those little fibrous roots shallowly, and that's all it takes. And
Hmm.
so, you got to be careful because they're not like really stuck in there right at the beginning.
Yes.
As far as division goes, your bed is really full and looks great. If you feel like it's time to divide, my recommendation is that you pull the pups or the babies off of the mother rhizome. It's going to be really evident when you pull that up out of the ground where that center mother rhizome is. You snap off the babies and you replant those babies and just dispose of the mother rhizome. Yes, it has potential to still push out new growth, maybe would bloom in several more years, but it's going to be less vigorous. And overall, right? So we've got new ones to take the lead. Let's just toss that
Mhm.
mother rhizome and replant those babies shallowly. So
Yeah, I like to tell people don't put more than like an inch of soil or mulch over the top of them if you can avoid it. And we see that not just in like irises bulbs, we see people over mulching often in landscape beds or not pulling away old mulch and putting fresh on and just keep repiling mulch on. And so you do end up with that thick hydrophobic layer where light, oxygen, etc. can't get through.
awesome. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Okay, Lee, I'm going to throw this one at you because I see you answered it in our question spreadsheet. This
Yeah.
question comes to us again from Henry County, so thanks for being active up there in Northwest Tennessee. My husband has asked me if we can start a tree from this sprout. It's coming up out of our tulip poplar, and if we can, how can we do it? So, if you want to
Yeah.
take it away, I'll pull a picture.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what we're looking at, or what Celeste is about to bring up, is simply a shoot that came off of the trunk of a tulip poplar tree. And, I kind of jokingly put, in the spreadsheet to answer this question that yes, I mean, that is the short answer. Yes, you could propagate it. You probably don't want to propagate it, however. Now that said, I don't want to discourage anyone from trying at home experiments. That's always great. But when we're thinking about what we call asexual propagation, not from seed, we're just taking one individual and we're replicating it. There's some very important processes or steps that we have to take. Number one is timing. So for tulip poplar, I was able to dig through the Durr manual. I know most of you all know this orange bound book. If you notice, one of the words on here is about plant propagation. So I immediately went to the Durr manual and started looking at tulip poplar, and it notes in there that it can be done, but you have to take those cuttings in July. We have to use that IBA, which is simply indole butyric acid. It's a plant auxin that basically incites or stimulates root growth. We have to dip those, and then we usually want to put those on a mist bench. I don't know if everyone's heard of a mist bench, but a mist bench is simply basically a growing medium made of sand, usually perlite or vermiculite, more often vermiculite, and then it runs at a regular interval. It mists those new cuttings about for 15 seconds, maybe every minute or so. There are various stages where we do this. But basically, it keeps humidity high, it keeps drainage really good, and it keeps the environment ready to promote rooting. So you would have to do this sterilely. You have to have a hood on that mist bench oftentimes. And then even in the Durr manual, and remember they're putting out thousands of these. They found about a 52% rooting success, which is really pretty low, I would argue. Usually, if it's 80 or 90, I feel confident telling folks to go try it. Even if they don't have a mist bench. But basically, what plants do is they start by redifferentiating these cells, and they'll develop callus tissue around those old cuts. Now, that can take weeks. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks oftentimes. And then after that callus tissue develops, they'll continue to go on to actually generate roots at that point, which can take another 4 to 5 weeks. Sometimes even longer than that. So we're talking about, 3, 4 months before we even get roots on that little cutting. And what I said in my comment was, if you're really looking for low dollar trees, consider ordering forestry saplings from the Department of Forestry. They come fully intact. They're 12 to 18 inches tall. They've got a complete root system, and they're literally $1 a piece. You can buy a bundle of 25 for maybe $30. So that's an option. But if you're just doing this for fun as an at-home experiment, give it a shot, but don't think you're just going to cut it and stick it in soil and walk away. That's what I would conclude with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a
Yep,
great rundown on propagating and potential and how to go about it if we
that's
think we
right.
want to do some experimenting. Okay, we've got time, I think, for one more in this Woody section. And don't worry, if you submitted a question, we didn't have time to answer it live. Everybody gets responses, and I'm going to show you where you can go to see all the questions that have been answered all across the state. So this one comes to us again from Knox County. It says, "Is this a native rose or an invasive multiflora rose? And if it's invasive, how do I remove it?" So this is going to take me a couple step process here, and I have an answer kind of prepped for us, but I want to make sure y'all can see the picture that they submitted before we go into our description. It keeps disappearing every time I try to click on it. There we go. Let me share my screen. Okay. So this is the picture that our friend has sent into us, and I understand that it can certainly be confusing, right? Multiflora, we hear awful things about it. It is listed on our invasive plant species list for Tennessee. So definitely, if we have that in landscapes or natural areas, we want to do our best to help eradicate those from those natural areas because they are going to spread rapidly. Um, Birds love to eat them. They consume the rose hips. They fly around to other landscape areas while they're hanging out. Obviously, they deposit those seeds. And before you know it, you have a multiflora rose that has popped up. I had this very thing happen in one of my viburnum, and if you guys on here know me, you know how much I love my viburnum collection, right? So from afar, I was just like, that plant's looking a lot bushier than it usually does. And I walked out there and I was like, oh my goodness. Literally, over a period of like 3 months, this multiflora rose had come up like inside right at the base of the plant of that viburnum. And why is that? It's because that viburnum has high wildlife quality value. They were on that viburnum feeding on the berries that viburnum had produced in late fall. They, left behind the seeds of the multiflora, which they had fed on previously. And now I have this quickly, rapidly growing invasive plant consuming my native viburnum. So that is just a real life example of why this is important, right? Um, I went in, no worries, we've saved the viburnum. The multiflora has been eradicated. However, I don't think this is a multiflora rose at all. Multiflora
Yeah.
typically are white and don't have this pale pink coloring. I want to show you, if you're not
Hey,
familiar with our native plant database, I'm going to show you an easy way to find it. You can go to uthort.com. Well, here, I'm just going to take all through the steps.
and
Go to
Celeste, the
uthort.com.
leaf shape looked a little wrong to me too. I think it's way
Yes,
too large of a leaf. I'm sure you'll
yes,
call.
definitely. So here we are on the homepage of UT Hort. Um, if you've never been here, please go explore. There's a tile here for native plants and wildlife. There's a direct link to the Tennessee Native Plant Database. When you get here, there's lots of different ways to search, but my favorite is just to go with plant type. I like to search by scientific name. Got too many tabs open. Here we go. So this is what it would look like. I picked organized by scientific name alphabetically for shrubs. We're going to scan down till we find Rosa. And look at all of our many options for native roses. We've got Carolina rose, Rosa palustris, Rosa saticara, Rosa virginiana. And it's hard because I don't have like more information to be able to tell you exactly uh, which one of these that particular picture is matched up to. But if I had to just take a wild stab, I'd say probably Rosa virginiana. So, in my opinion, this is likely one of our native roses. It's going to take a little more investigation to compare those leaf structures and like flower organization as well. So, any y'all want to add anything else? Lee, Taylor, anybody?
Yeah, I looked at it and they sent a great picture that I could zoom in on. And so one of
Oh,
the
good.
main things with that multiflora rose is the leaf stipule. The end of that leaf base is really feathery and fuzzy. And this one is not. You can actually get zoom in and see the leaf stipule on these. And then also leaflet number. So with multifloras, they tend to have like 5 to 11 leaflets. Yeah, if you zoom in, right, like if you take your, oh yeah, you can go in right to the
Right
right.
there?
That, no, yeah, go to the right.
I don't know. It won't
Scoocha,
let me go to the
scoochy,
right.
scoochy.
Over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So down, you see that little pink edging on that leaf stipule, and it's not hairy, it's smooth. With a multiflora rose, there tend to be like feathery and fuzzy. And this one's not, but also the leaflet number. So each of those are leaflets, and most of them it looks like have 3 leaflets per leaf. Multiflora tends to have 5 to 11. So there's already a different leaf structure. Like Lee said, the leaves are bigger than what we would see on a multiflora. The thorns don't look as aggressive. Now, this is a younger part of the plant, so that's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, I would say that most every distinguishing feature that we can see from this picture leads me to think it's a native climbing rose, not a multiflora rose.
Excellent. So control would not be warranted in this case. But if it were a multiflora rose and we wanted to approach control, we've got a couple different options. I always prefer the cut and paint method. So essentially, cut that woody plant as far to the base, flush with the ground as you can. Immediately after cutting, you want to apply fully concentrated glyphosate. Um, like I said, not Roundup that you buy at the box store anymore because that's not glyphosate. You need a fully concentrated like 40% glyphosate. You're going to paint that onto the cut while it's fresh. It's going to take that in and really work through the root system to take care of that for you. There's another cool method that Dr. Andrea Ludwig taught me last year where you can take the end of the multiflora rose and like put it into a water bottle, like the top of a water bottle, and the water bottle has the concentrated glyphosate in it, and then you tape up the top of the water bottle so nothing can come out of it, and then you can just leave it. and then come back later once the plant has died, and then you can reuse that bottle over and over. So lots of different approaches available to us for eradication of woody plants. But definitely, I thought this was a really fun grouping of plant questions. Thank y'all so much for joining us and submitting questions and being here with us today to learn more. What we want to help, build your diagnostics and plant insects, diet, and disease capabilities for identification. So I think this is really fun for me. Thanks all the panelists for being here with us, and thanks for sending in those questions. And we will see y'all at our next regularly scheduled office hours, which will be July 10th, Friday, July 10th. Same place, same time. We'll send some reminder emails. We look forward to seeing y'all. Thanks for being here. Bye.